Mr. President, we must provide food for Nigerians at this point, and then we continue the implementation of those that will be in the medium and long terms.
The Nigerian economy is currently facing challenging times, largely caused by distortions resulting from major fiscal and monetary policy actions of previous government, notably the huge direct lending to the federal government by the central bank to the tune of about 30 trillion.
President directed that food should be made available to those in need from our strategic green reserves. And I think it's very important.
The Nigerian economy is currently facing challenging times, largely caused by distortions resulting from major fiscal and monetary policy actions of previous government, notably the huge direct lending to the federal government by the central bank to the tune of about 30 trillion, the operation of an opaque fuel subsidy regime, and a raft of interventions by the central bank which seemed not well targeted. The result has been rising inflation, especially food, and persistent naira depreciation. Expectedly, the ongoing efforts by the current administration to correct the anomalies of the past have come with some painful economic conditions which need to be ameliorated. In reaction to the current economic hardship Nigerians are going through, the Joint Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Finance, National Planning, Agriculture and Appropriation held an interactive session with the key members of the federal government's economic management team. The aim was to ascertain the true state of affairs of the country's economy, the nature of the challenges and measures being put in place to address within the shortest possible time. What emerged from the interaction is the urgent need to bring down inflation, boost food production, and stabilize the economy through proper coordination of fiscal and monetary policies. On page 2, you have the introduction and list of attendees. About 35 senators attended the session, and from the economic team of the federal government, on page 3, we have the Minister of Finance and the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. We also had the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, the Minister of State for Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Aliyu Sabi Abdullahi, the Governor of Central Bank, Mr. Olayemi Kadoso, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank Economic Policy, Mr. Mohamed Sani Abdullahi. So page 4 gives a background to all of the conversations that ensued, and then the summary of the activities from this session. You will have it on page 5. And if I may summarize, the questions that were posed by the Joint Committee of the Senate, they are on page 6, and they centered around inflation and exchange rate related questions. To be specific, the key 5 points there, you have what specific measures have been put in place by the monetary authority to ensure price stability. 2, what has the economic management team done to improve FDI inflows in the country? 3, what efforts has the CBN made to strengthen the naira over the medium to the long term? 4, what are the consequences that the CBN have put in place for individuals with invalid FX claims? 5, what sustainable solution is the CBN seeking to neutralize the adverse effect of the 30 trillion outstanding ways and means that we have in the books of the CBN? On agriculture and food security, the related questions are as follows. 1, what is the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security doing to ensure stability of food products in the country? 2, how is the ministry protecting farmers across the country to ensure they have improved productivity. 3, what efforts are being made by the Ministry of Agriculture to support players in the agricultural value chain to drive growth in the sector? Now, direct questions to the CBN are as follows. 1, how does the CBN plan to support productive sectors of the economy? So on page 7, it continues on page 7. 2, what is the CBN doing to ensure collaboration with the federal government to tackle the economic issues in the country? 3, is the CBN looking to conduct forensic audit of FX allocations and transactions for past transactions between 2016 to 2022? Then, of course, we had general economic questions as well. 1, what actions are being taken by the monetary and fiscal authorities to ensure coordination of policy and activities? 2, the National Assembly approved about 500 billion naira for subsidy removal as palliatives. However, palliatives have not been distributed by the government. What is the economic management team doing about this? 3, what is the Minister of Finance doing to ensure coordination of economic programs embarked on by other ministries? The response from the economic management team, we have it on page 7, note 2.1. It started with the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. In his presentation, the Minister of the Economy provided the following information on the plans and activities of the government to resolve the economic challenges facing the country. 1, he said in the short term, the administration is focused on inflation reduction and stability of foreign exchange rate. 2, measures are being taken by the government to boost oil and non-oil revenue. 3, the government is adopting technology to drive timely revenue collection. 4, the government is seeking ways to cut down on expenditures to reduce fiscal burden. 5, the government is ensuring that pain felt by the vulnerable and the poor in the short term is reduced to the barest minimum. So you have on page 8 the response of the Minister of Agriculture and as well as the response of the CBN governor. So I'll just go into the recommendations. So on page 10, you have the recommendations. In the light of the exhaustive deliberations and thorough examination of pertinent issues and presentations, the Senate Joint Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Finance, National Planning, Agriculture and Appropriation presents the following recommendations. These recommendations are grounded in a comprehensive understanding of the issues at hand with due consideration given to the presentations, data analysis, and of course the goals of addressing the legacy challenges posed by insecurity, climate change, inadequate power supply, transport infrastructure, which all contribute to rising inflation in the country. And they are as follows. On page 11, 4.1, 1, arrest inflationary pressure through liquidity reduction. The government should prioritize liquidating the 30 trillion ways and means obligation of the federal government through a quicker resolution mechanism than the current securitization arrangement for over a period of 40 years. In addition, the CBN should put in place measures to ensure the repayment of various intervention programs by the beneficiaries after a thorough evaluation of their performance. This will help reduce money supply. Also, the quasi-fiscal measures totaling about 10 trillion, of which the anchor borrower program is a major part, should be further interrogated by the committee with a view to plugging loopholes in future development finance activities of the bank. B, on foreign exchange management, the committee commends the bank, that is the central bank, for some of the measures put in place to address exchange rate volatility and improve liquidity in the FX market. These include clearing outstanding valid obligations, introducing new operational mechanisms for BDCs and IMTOs, and enforcing the net open position limit. However, in order to ensure transparency and boost confidence in the market, there is need for the committee to further investigate the 2.4 billion forex transaction adjudged invalid out of the outstanding 7 billion obligations, with a view to identifying culprits and meting out appropriate sanctions to serve as deterrent. Furthermore, on page 12, the committee needs to interrogate the sudden revision of the rate calculation methodology by the FMDQ on Monday, January 29, 2024, and the resultant sharp increase in the NAFEM rate, that's the foreign exchange market rate, from 891 naira to the dollar to 1,348.63, which significantly impacted the value of dollar-denominated obligations. This step is necessary in order to safeguard investment, protect jobs and economic agents in Nigeria with foreign currency exposure. C, fiscal discipline and expenditure reduction. Improve fiscal discipline by reducing government expenditure to lower fiscal deficits and promote fiscal sustainability. In this connection, exchange gains from naira depreciation should be used to wind down existing government deficits at all levels rather than continue to expand the size of the budget. D, rapid social safety net interventions. Provide interventions in the area of food and transportation to alleviate the suffering of vulnerable Nigerians and mitigate the impact of the economic challenges. E, compliance and transparency of economic actions. The CBN should ensure compliance with the provisions of the Act in respect of ways and means and accountability through timely submission of its budget, financial statements, and reports of its activities to the President and the National Assembly as stipulated in the Act. F, enhance fiscal monetary collaboration. Provide a legal framework for effective collaboration of fiscal and monetary policies. In the area of agriculture and food security, the following recommendations were also adopted. 1, encourage local industries by identifying strategic commodities to be based on regional and state comparative advantage. On page 13, you also have, it continues on page 13, so you have addressed issues of land tenure systems in Nigeria by encouraging state governments to create land banks for agricultural investment. 3, give incentives to manufacturers of farming equipment to manufacture or assemble them locally. 4, promote commodities exchange by making available to them on hire or lease basis or through the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. 5, deploy private partnership to invest in cold rooms to reduce post-harvest losses. 6, increase significantly the total arable land under cultivation from current 34 million hectares in partnership with state governments. 7, recapitalize and restructure the Bank of Industry with a view to bringing in private sector players. 8, prioritize development of critical rural infrastructure such as roads, using sukuk bonds, reactivation centers, and off-grid energy solutions via green bonds as part of measures to reduce post-harvest losses. 9, strengthen agricultural research institutions and universities with appropriate frameworks developed for the commercialization of their research findings and produce. 10, improve insecurity across Nigeria's agricultural investment through a national legislation for community policing and security that empowers farming clusters and associations to ensure security in their communities. 11, provide smallholder farmers with access to credit, input, modern farming techniques, and extension services to increase their productivity and yields. 12, encourage the adoption of mechanized farming techniques and technologies to improve efficiency and productivity in agriculture. 13, strengthen extension services to provide farmers with training, information, and technical support on modern practices, pest management, etc. In conclusion, the persistent trend and the fall of the Naira underscored the urgency for proactive measures. The findings from the session illuminate the multifaceted factors contributing to the current challenges. As this report indicates, a collaborative effort between the executive and the legislature and between the fiscal and monetary authorities is imperative to mitigate these risks associated with the potential hyperinflation and the continued depreciation of the Naira. We are convinced that the implementation of the recommendations contained in this report will go a long way in bringing down inflation, strengthening the Naira, and stabilizing the economy. Indeed, the gravity of the situation demands collective commitment to implementing these recommendations and forging a path towards economic stability. Thank you, Mr. President, and my distinguished colleagues.
Let me commend the Joint Committee for a very well done job. This is a very exhaustive and comprehensive job. Mr. President, I want to also say that this report should go beyond the usual passage that we will do here. This report, after the adoption by the Senate, should be implemented. And I'm using the word implementation very purposefully, Mr. President. Mr. President, if you look at page 12, distinguished colleagues, 12D particularly, where the committee talks of rapid social safety net interventions, providing interventions in the area of food and transportation to alleviate the suffering of vulnerable Nigerians and mitigate the impact of economic challenges. Today, this is our life, and almost everyone is affected in one way or the other. So, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I want us to look at the recommendations in the perspectives of those that need immediate implementation, those that will be medium term, and those that will be long term. The immediate are critical because we need to survive first to go to the medium and the long terms. Mr. President, our relevant committees, for example, on this, food and transportation, particularly food, our relevant committee, and here will be the Committee on Agriculture, I don't know which of the two, and probably our Committee on Economic Planning, should be able to sit down with relevant agencies of government on how they intend to provide the food that Mr. President had set up a committee to provide for our citizens. Mr. President, it is important that we keep tabs on this particular item, because from what we see around and what we feel, what we hear, things are not so good for citizens. And the executive side is trying to do something. But if you look at the debate, Mr. President, many will tell you that even what we think we have in the silos in stock may not be up to that figure. And that means that we have to look for much of the food that we need for our people elsewhere. Whether we go to the market and buy, or whatever it is that we need to do, Mr. President, we must provide food for Nigerians at this point. And then we continue the implementation of those that will be in the medium and long terms. But Mr. President, this committee has done a very, very good job. Thank you very much.
Because the president directed that food should be made available to those in need from our strategic grain reserves. And I think it's very important. Well, that is very commendable. It's commendable. We commend Mr. President for doing that. What is important here is that the relevant committees of the Senate should follow up and make sure that everything is done properly. Moving to show that the food is released as the grains are released as directed by Mr. President, and follow up on all aspects of the exercise is very, very important. It's a call to all our relevant committees. Please do that and liaise with the leadership to give update in respect to that exercise. Senator Jibril Issa, the state governments will also follow suit. They should also go out there and procure grains and distribute to those in need. This crisis or the problem we are facing the solution does not rest on the shoulder of the federal government alone. All the subsidy has been removed and the state governments are making more money. Yes, some state governments are doing well, trying to get across to those in need. Others should also do the same. Not only the state government, even local governments, their grants, their allocations from the federation account has increased. They should also go out there, procure grains and distribute. What we have at hand is not the sole responsibility of the federal government to solve. The entire system must come together, must collaborate to make sure we do the needful. So state governments should come out and do the needful. You have gotten more revenue from the removal of oil subsidy, bring out money and assist. Local government also do the same. In fact, we are very happy because some senators here and members are also doing the same. They are distributing grains and that is commendable. So please, state government and local government should please come out and emulate the federal government. Continue.
To the economy. And this arose from the inability of the previous governments to take some actions, okay? To take some actions or take some decisions. As it is today, the decisions that have been taken recently by the federal government, if properly implemented, will set Nigeria on a sustainable path for growth. Having said that, the implementation is very key of the recommendations made by this committee. The implementation is very, very important. I want to employ all the relevant government agencies, ministries and agencies to put their hands together, ensure that the recommendations are distributed to these ministries for effective follow-up. Okay, and at the end of the day, there should be periodic report to the Senate on the extent to which these recommendations have been implemented. I want to recommend too that the federal government should set up an implementation team. Okay, that implementation team should report to the Senate or to the National Assembly periodically on their efforts as far as implementation of these recommendations are concerned. Otherwise, it will be a wasteful exercise.
Senator
Babangida Hussein, representing Jigawa Northwest. Mr. President, I'd like to speak to the effort of the executive in providing immediate relief for food from the strategic grains reserve silos. This is commendable and this is quite appreciated. However, the problem is multidimensional and it requires a multidimensional approach. Now I'd like to speak to recommendation 2 on page 13 and recommendation 11 on the same page. Both of them are talking about the issues of land tenure system and also the issue of accessibility to credit by small farmer holders. Sir, distinguished colleagues, we all know the difficulty in raising title for land. Raising title for land is very critical to getting the required security to access facility from banks. And this is one of the major problems why most farmers from our part of the country, especially from my zone, were unable to leverage on the credit schemes that are available with the banks. And I think I'd like to go to a very popular book, which I recommend we take time to look at it. And the title of the book is Why Capitalism Works Well in the West and Fails Everywhere Else by Hernando Soto. That book is talking about the inability of businesses to flourish in the third world because of our inability to raise capital. And you cannot raise capital without land title. And you cannot access credit without title. So therefore, I think the two recommendations speak to the same matter. So my recommendation, or additional recommendation, is that state government should be encouraged to fast track and simplify the process of land titling so that farmers can be able to access credits from banks and programs of government. Thank you, sir.
This report for a very thorough professional exercise. And it is my view, this report should not just be a typical laid report before the Parliament. This, in my view, should be sent to the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces for onward transmission to the Federal Executive Council, because this will enrich their capacity, their insight, their overview. I believe the joint committees have done a very good job, a very thorough job, and a very commendable job. But Mr. President, in view of the hula valoo about incessant, continuous castigation of the last regime of President Buhari in the last 8 years, I also concur to the castigation. But Mr. President, the fact of the matter, sir, if you peruse through the Constitution, Section 80, 88, 89, 134, and so on and so forth, these sections, so named, gave the National Assembly the powers of oversight. And therefore, when you hear people saying the regime did not do well, the question comes back to the National Assembly. How far has the National Assembly also done its oversight? The National Assembly could have done better, but are we able, do we have the capacity to be able to do this job? You and me, Mr. President, knows in the last 20 years while we're here, there are areas that we do not have the capacity to oversight. And probably over the years, because of fear of castigation by the general public, we have not been able to enhance our ability, our powers to peruse the executive in terms of implementation of this budget. Example, sir, when we have issues that has to do with overseas, from America to London to Japan, what monies do you have to be able to follow it up, implement it? What capacity do you have to raise questions and probably come up with answers that is needed to this country? Going forward, I think the National Assembly, sir, must remain steadfast, create capacity for itself, and therefore, when things like this arose, some of these things arose out of our inability to do the needful, out of some expectation that has not been met, is because sometimes the party position. We take party positions regardless of the national issue. We take ethnic position regardless of the national issue. we take regional stand regardless of the importance of the national issue. So some of these things culminated to where we are. Finally, sir, I think it is important to take the first paragraph of the conclusion. And what the first paragraph said, in conclusion, the persistent inflationary trend and the fall of the Naira underscores the urgency for proactive measures. There is no substitute to this. The more the Naira falls, the more suffering comes on board. And therefore, until try as much as possible to think out of the box in making sure that this downtrend of the Naira is halted before the end of this month, before the end of this year, there will be a lot of sufferings. And we are here in making sure that people don't suffer. Mr. President, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator.